Bears Nation gets some unexpected news on Saturday, January 4th from The Athletic as the Chicago Bears are in on Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver as their next potential head coach. The former defensive tackle from Notre Dame spent 7 seasons in the NFL as a player before becoming a coach in 2010, where he has coached across college and the NFL and now enters the mix of Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Pete Carroll, Brian Flores, and more for the Chicago Bears' next head coach search. Weaver spikes the Bears' interest due to his mentality of being a leader of men, along with what he's done with the Miami defense in 2024. But also, he's now the third former NFL modern-day player to be a candidate for the head coaching position for the Bears to interview, something that has not been a thing in the recent Bears history. But I think there is more to this, which I think it's a sneaky move by the front office of the Bears, and I'm going to explain why this is a good thing that we're at least interviewing him. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago Bears. My name is Dick Brody, and as always, thank you for tuning in. And before we begin today's show, like this video if you like how the Bears are being aggressive already with their head coaching search for their next head coach in 2025 ahead of Black Monday. And also, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to stay up to date on all Chicago Bears news and notifications for free. Help us hit 23,000 subscribers by next Friday. Our goal of 40,000 by the end of 2025 starts now. But let's get into Weaver, shall we? As someone who is new to the Bears head coaching mix and is pretty interesting as well. Anthony Weaver, 44 years old, has been in football for a very long time. The former second-round pick out of Notre Dame has been a part of various winning cultures, has had success as a coach and a player, and knows what it means to be a leader of men. And during his time in the NFL, he played for 7 seasons with 2 good franchises at the time, and he actually went back and coached both of them. But the former second-round pick was 52nd overall in 2002 by the Baltimore Ravens, where he spent 7 seasons in the NFL, 4 of them with the Ravens, 3 of them with the Texans. And his career stats, not terrible, but he was definitely a depth guy. Going through his stats, 257 total tackles, 200 of them being solo, 15 and a half sacks, 5 of them coming in his second season, 5 forced fumbles, all being fumble recoveries, and 20 pass deflections. So he didn't really live up to the second round hype that he was given, but he did do a good job as a depth guy. And then after his NFL career was over, he went back to school as a graduate at Florida, where then he became a graduate assistant coach in 2010 for the Florida Gators. Followed by that, he actually was hired after he was done with his graduate program at Florida by North Texas to be their linebackers coach in 2011. So he's a defensive line guy, went to linebackers, so he's learning the different aspects of the defense. But after that impressive season with North Texas in 2011, he got his first shot at coaching in the NFL. What he's done in the NFL, he started with the New York Jets as a defensive line assistant coach in 2012. And even though the Jets went 6-10 that season, they were actually ranked the 17th best defensive line after 1 season of him being the assistant coach. And that helped him get some attention because he ended up going to the Buffalo Bills after that, where he became their official defensive line coach. And that's where the spark of the attention of becoming who he is today started. He had 3 players with more than 10 sacks that season for the Bills, 4 with 7.5 or more, and totaling 4 Pro Bowl defensive linemen, 2 being starters, 2 being depth pieces in the Pro Bowl that year back in 2013, where the Pro Bowl was still an NFL game. And that's incredible, especially being only an NFL coach for 2 seasons and unlocking players like that. Did a pretty darn good job. The Browns like what he brought to the table, and they ended up offering him more money to come be their defensive line coach for 2 years, where he helped develop a Cleveland defensive line. But unfortunately, when they were firing back in 2015, he was part of that. Quickly picked up by his alma mater in the Houston Texans, where he was their defensive line coach for 4 seasons. And that's where he got his first defensive coordinator position calling, which wasn't the best. He was ranked 30th in total yards, 27th in points allowed, 30th in rushing touchdowns, and 32nd in takeaways. he had to go back to the drawing board and learn a little bit of what it takes to be a defensive coordinator, which he went back to the Baltimore Ravens, his true alma mater, and he was their defensive line coach and their associate head coach from 2021 to 2023, which the Ravens had a top 10 defense in all of those seasons while he was there, along with a top 10 defensive line every single year. He developed various Pro Bowlers, almost helped the Baltimore Ravens get to the Super Bowl with their defense. And with that, the Dolphins gave him his big break where he dominated his 1 year as the Dolphins defensive coordinator, which he still has one game left. And before I get more into that, just after that little segment, what are your thoughts on Weaver so far? Pretty successful guy in the NFL, but I think you guys are going to want to hold your comments a little bit longer because what he has done in the NFL is actually very impressive, especially with not only his time before the Miami Dolphins, but with the Miami Dolphins this year. And I did a little extra research on that for you guys. So going into his top 5 defense in the Miami Dolphins right now and why he has sparked even more interest, not just being a leader of men and the resume he had together. In 2024, the Miami Dolphins lost defensive tackle Christian Watkins to the Las Vegas Raiders. Their defense looked like it was going to take a step back. They actually made a significant jump forward. Not just with Weaver, but overall just his mentality and what he's brought. And he's practically saved the Miami Dolphins being able to be in playoff contention all the way this late in the season. But with Weaver, they did not digress. Dolphins defense this year has been one of the best in the league. 3rd in total yards allowed, 4th in passing touchdowns allowed, 6th in rushing attempts, 7th in yards per play, 8th in rushing touchdowns allowed, 8th in points allowed, 9th in rushing yards allowed, and 9th in passing yards allowed. Overall, look at all those categories. And a lot of them that you heard, rushing attempts, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns. A big struggle for the Chicago Bears this past season, and he can absolutely help bring that defense up to speed. We were hoping Eric Washington was going to do that, but he also is a proven defensive coordinator across the board. He can do it from the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary. And I think that it's pretty impressive considering the amount of injuries that Miami has had this year on both sides of the ball. And practically that defense has helped keep them in playoff contention as long as they were this season. And you can ask TD over on Roundtable Sports, which I'm on Wednesdays and Friday nights, that he loves this guy. I actually texted him right before this episode and was like, hey, what do you think about him? Should the Bears go after him? He's like, I know you guys don't want a defensive guy, but if you do, Anthony Weaver's a pretty darn good candidate. But I think that there's more to this that a lot of people might not be considering out of the gate. So put your thoughts now of Anthony Weaver on everything. But here's what I think. He's a leader of men. No doubt about that. Big outlets are saying that's what the Bears want, right? But this is for a head coach job, or is it for the defensive coordinator job? Miami could be canning their entire staff after this year and blowing up the roster, according to some reports. And the Bears can bring him in, get to know him, talk to him saying, hey, if we don't give you the head coaching job, would you be considered as a defensive coordinator? Because if Miami's canning everyone everywhere, you remember Matt Eberflus was canned or going to get canned by the Indianapolis Colts before we hired him as their head coach. Because if he's canned, he's going to be looking for a job. Bears could interview him, take some notes. Whoever their head coach is like, hey, have you considered your defensive coordinator? Have you considered Anthony Weaver? Could be a chess move by the Chicago Bears front office bringing him in, but it's just a thought on my end, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the situation. But with that, thank you, as always, for tuning into this episode of Just Another Year Chicago Bears. Like this video if you haven't already. Comment your thoughts in the comment section below, and please subscribe if you haven't already to stay up to date on all Chicago Bears news and notifications for free and help me hit 23,000 by next Friday. But with that, thank you, as always, for tuning in this episode of Just Another Year Chicago Bears. My name is Nick Brody, and as always, bear down, baby.